Thanks for watching the Carolina Justice Report. I'm Rainee Romero with the Lovely Law Firm. Today we're talking about a topic that has rocked our community, the Brittanee Drexel case. Today I'm joined with attorneys Sarah Austin and Amy Lawrence. Ladies, lots to talk about here. This Brittanee Drexel case has been huge in our area. So let's give a little bit of a backstory. Amy, I'll start with you. Kind of, for those, you probably know about Brittanee Drexel, but just in case you don't, what do we know about her?
Right. So we know that Brittany Drexel in 2009 left home. Said I think she was saying that she was spending the night with a friend and came down to the beach with her to meet some of her friends. And her mom didn't know, thought she was, in town up in New York. And when she got down here, she went missing within 2 days of being here.
Yeah.
And no one ever found her. And, it rocked our community. There's still to this day billboards up in the Myrtle Beach area and Grand Strand area, wanting to know information on Brittany Drexel. And, in the last couple years, we've gotten these weird press releases and press conferences that really didn't give us any answers, but it felt like they were getting close to them. And it was announced that they have found her body and they know who did it.
Yes.
And a man named Raymond Moody, who we know now was on the radar of the police when she went missing and was questioned about it back in 2009. And he was questioned about it because he had a history. He was in the area that they knew he was in the vicinity of this happening. And he had a history of kidnapping and sexually assaulting young girls.
Well, and I did see that they had already questioned him the same year that she had gone missing. And so is that why they questioned him? They didn't really have any evidence towards him. They just questioned him because he was...
From what I understand, it was his...
that profile?
Yeah, absolutely. He hit the profile and he was in the vicinity of where she was when she went missing.
How insane that they had the right person all along.
Yeah, and one of the things I think that the reason why they couldn't quite put it all together is because at the time he didn't have a car. He had a motorcycle. And that's why they couldn't quite piece it all together.
Interesting.
But we now know that he was actually buried. She was buried in
Georgetown.
In Pawleys Island.
Right, Georgetown
on his
County.
property, right?
On his property, in his side yard. And he comes from an affluent family from Pawleys Island, which is kind of insane to me.
Yeah, that is weird.
But he's in prison time for kidnapping and sexually assaulting.
And from what I understand, he did that time in California.
He did, yeah.
Was it federal or was it just in California?
In California.
Yeah.
I'm actually in the process of reading a book about his lover, his jail lover.
Yeah, his prison.
His prison husband.
Yeah, boyfriend.
Yeah.
And what is that book? Does that
So
bring light to anything?
I'm only a third of the way through. Yeah, it's called Lost and Found, and it's by Ernest Merchant, who is a really good guy who turned his whole life around. He got tied up in drugs. It was just drug stuff. And when he went to prison, they kind of found each other, and he never knew what he was in there for. Mr. Moody had lied to him. And so when he finally, a couple years into this prison sentence, he finds out what he was in there for. And he has this crisis of conscience, do we stay together? Do we not stay together? He ends up ultimately they end up staying together. And he moves back after he gets out of prison, and they all moved to Pawleys Island together.
Oh, wow.
And now he's a successful business person. He has a hair salon, does extremely well.
Oh, wow.
And everybody I know that knows him has really wonderful things to say about him.
So were they together when this happened?
No, they were not together. They've been broken up. But I'm in the middle of reading this book, so I'm excited. I'll give everybody a
This sheds a lot, I think,
411.
a lot of light on Raymond Moody. Because I don't know, when I think about Brittany Drexel, I think that's the first time I learned that pigs can eat a body, because everyone's like, they're never gonna find her.
Yeah.
Pigs ate her.
Alligators
She's
ate
gone.
her.
It was just Brittany Drexel is gone, and it was just focused on this one case. But now to know that Raymond Moody has been in our community
for all these years,
and all these women have been missing, and he's responsible for at least Brittany Drexel, and he confessed to that. It's really scary, and I think the book just kind of sheds light. I'm excited to read it. It will shed some light on who this person is and how do these people even operate, and how do they go undetected.
Yeah.
Well, and do you think that other women will come out during this? Do you think that there's been other women since Brittany Drexel? And that
we know about other cases where women have been there's been these attempted abductions, and they've never really been able to piece back to who it was. And, going back to, so this was 2009, and I got out of law school in 2008. And my husband, Justin, used to laugh at me because I had a wall. I thought I was an FBI profiler, obviously. But I would keep these articles of women who went missing in our community, and they all had a very similar look. You know what I mean? They were all young. They all had long hair, thin, tall, like, they all had like this certain look. And I used to worry that we had a serial killer in our hands. As a matter of fact, I had conversations with solicitors about it. Yeah. Justin's always like, you should come look at her wall. I finally took it down. But we have women in this community. And so what people don't realize about Myrtle Beach is that we're extremely transient. We have about 40,000 people in the area, permanent residents. Maybe it's a lot more since the boom and COVID and all that stuff in the last couple of years. But, we have all these people who come in and out, and they're never really accounted for, and they go missing. And so, we don't know. We don't know how many women could be out there. I hope there's none. I hope there's zero.
I hope Brittany Drexel was it. But this guy who has done this before, I don't get the feeling that she's his only victim.
Yeah.
And it makes you wonder about everyone else who's gone missing.
Because we've had women come forward from California to tell their stories about what happened to them, and as little girls. And from what I understand, there were 7 that we know of. And they've started telling their stories, and it breaks my heart for Brittany Drexel, and it breaks my heart for her family and her mother, that they have, to think about this happening to their baby. That's just the worst.
Yeah. Do we have kind of, I know we're still kind of waiting on more details to come out with some parts of this, but do we know what led them back to Raymond Moody and kind of all that?
That's my favorite part of this story, because I think, and kind of how Heather Elvis, I think about her when I think about Brittany Drexel, when you think about high profile people going missing. But so the solicitor's office charged, I guess they had been investigating Raymond Moody, and then they charged him with obstruction of justice, which is the same charge that they charged the Moores with in Heather Elvis's case. Right. And it's kind of like a scare tactic. At least that's how I look at it. We're charging you with obstruction of justice because you're lying to us about your involvement. And Raymond Moody confessed and then took them to her body, which was in his yard.
So how does the obstruction of justice work? How do you charge somebody on that, and why?
The Supreme Court, I think, is still deciding that. They just had arguments about if you can charge someone with obstruction of justice just because you feel like they're lying to you in an investigation, because then you get to take away their freedom, right? You arrest them, and then you get to interrogate them. All the things that you can't do if you're just going up to interview somebody. And so I think in this case it worked, and I'm glad that they found Brittany Drexel's body. But I think that it's a slippery slope, I guess, to just start, when the investigators aren't getting answers they want, just to arrest you for obstruction of justice and see what the outcome is. Because in the Moore case, nobody confessed. And Sidney Moore is doing like 10 years or something for obstruction of justice because he lied to them about a phone call, and they didn't like that.
90 seconds later, he says, "Okay, that wasn't true," and then tells the truth. So the obstruction of justice was an obstruction for 90 seconds. So that's what the Supreme Court of South Carolina is just heard arguments.
Are they allowed to do it?
And
it's hard because in this case, I'm glad that he confessed, that got him to confess. But I just think on a grand scheme of things, to allow them to charge people with obstruction of justice just as part of an investigation to see if they'll flip or talk or what comes out of that.
Constitutionally, it feels icky.
Dangerous.
Icky and dangerous as attorneys.
It's a line, a fine line.
And I also want to say this too. As a mother and as a woman, that is really hard to reconcile, right? That we recognize that this is a slippery slope, because it makes me cry. That family gets to bury their kid now. Do you know what I mean? And that gives them the closure of knowing what happened to her. So it's really hard to reconcile those things. And I know that, like, a lot of people, when they watch this, is going to really think that that's callous to say that this is a slippery slope on some level. But we want to just acknowledge that, like, it's turmoil for us too, and we feel torn as a mother and a woman. We feel torn to say that, but it really is a slippery slope.
It isn't. And then I think about, because I am so happy that for Brittany Drexel's mom, who has been on the news, that she got this closure that she needed. But when I talk about a slippery slope, I'm also talking about Timothy Taylor, who the cops and his family is speaking out now. Him and his father were accused of doing this to Brittany Drexel when they had nothing to do with it at all.
And they had no evidence except
They
a
had no
jailhouse
evidence,
snitch.
and they were on national news being, look what these people did to this poor spring breaker. And so I think police investigations, it's so important how you do them to get justice for the families,
to do them right?
but also to not wrongfully accuse people of
Right.
crimes so heinous as this. And so I think, you know,
I think we need to give folks a background on who Timothy is, just in case they don't know the story. So, can you tell folks kind of about what the word on the street was that happened to Brittany before we actually found out it was Raymond Moody?
yeah, so I was a lot younger when this happened. And I just remember seeing it on the news, her going missing, because I vacationed in Myrtle Beach all the time before I lived here.
Yeah.
And then him and his father were accused of abducting her. And the story behind it was that I guess Timothy was in jail for an unrelated robbery, and a jailhouse
he took
snitch.
some money from the McDonald's he was working at.
Right.
Yeah.
Right. Yeah.
A jailhouse snitch said he told me that his dad and him kidnapped and killed Brittany Drexel.
Right.
The snitch trying to
Through an
get a
alligator
deal.
pit. Or
Yeah,
something.
they
something
brought her
insane.
to like a house where she was basically like gang raped and then threw into an alligator pit.
Something
So,
crazy.
and what a horrible thing for this her parents to hear,
Yeah.
and then to just never
Yeah, so
mind,
her
horrific.
parents are worried about, oh my God, she's in an alligator pit. This is awful. His family is like, all he did was
He
take
took some
money
money from
from
McDonald's
McDonald's,
while he's
and
working
now all of
there.
a sudden he's wrapped up in this murder.
Yeah.
And so I feel for his family as well. I know
And I
they've
felt
been
for him, like,
they've been coming out.
because it's one thing to take some money from the McDonald's you're working. It's a very different to
Right.
say that you raped and murdered a young woman.
Yeah.
You know what I mean? Those are very different crimes.
Well, and it makes you wonder too. I mean, obviously, the whys could go on for days of the what ifs and whys of why this jail inmate kind of said that he heard these things. I mean, some people are saying, well, maybe this did happen to a different missing woman. And then others are saying, well, no, he just made this crap up. So it's hard to know too now, like why
there's
this story was
Well,
concocted.
what we find as
Jailhouse
lawyers,
snitches make up stories so that they can get deals on their own cases.
right, to get a lesser sentence.
To get a lesser
Gotcha.
sentence. So he's much more valuable, and they're much more likely to give him a deal if he testifies against whoever killed Brittany Drexel. And he
Right.
opens up the case, and they're more likely to let the snitch out.
It's such a wild
and the
story,
problem-
though.
and
Like,
the problem
she was
is-
fed to alligators.
Yeah, it's
so
insane.
weird.
But it's like the Murdochs. Like we couldn't have ever predicted that either. So
Yeah,
who knows?
true.
But what we see is we see these jailhouse snitches doing this stuff because it's pay for play, right? I say whatever you need me to say, and you get your conviction, and I get out a little bit early. Everybody wins.
Right.
But the problem is they lie. And what happens is, and I'm not saying this happened here because we don't know, but what we see in cases, and we have seen before, and more than once, many times, we see a prosecutor or a police officer who is so desperate to get an answer
Yeah.
that they don't have, that they're willing to do whatever it takes to get that conviction, even if it's getting the wrong person.
Right.
Because and that's a long time. 13 years is a long time not to know what happened to somebody.
Because it's hard to look at somebody's mom, at Brittany's mom, and tell her we still don't know.
Yeah.
You know, and how could you not know? How could you not figure it out? And so they just try to rush to an answer. So I'm thankful that although the obstruction of justice thing makes me weary, I'm thankful that they kept at this investigation for so long, and that we do finally have some closure, and that this guy Raymond Moody is finally removed from our community, because
Can't hurt anybody else.
that is a scary monster
Very scary.
type of person.
I 100% give credit to Brittany Drexel's mother for keeping this at the forefront of the news, on top of mind, and pushing for prosecutors and police officers, investigators not to give up.
Yeah.
Yeah, I think
It takes a mother,
Well,
okay?
yeah. Well, and how many girls go missing that don't have that attention, and so they just
More
kind
than
of
not.
slip through the cracks.
and it's hard to grieve. I think Brittany's mom, I can't speak for her obviously, knew that she was grieving because she hadn't seen her daughter in so long, but to grieve and to still find the courage to make sure that people are doing what they're supposed to be doing and not let this investigation just go by the wayside was, I mean, she deserves all the credit. And
Absolutely. And in another state, too. This wasn't even in her hometown. I mean,
And what people don't know about Brittany Drexel's mother is that she advocates for missing people to this day because she doesn't want another family to feel like her.
yeah,
Yeah.
that's amazing. You know, and just to go over, I know, there's so much to talk about with this case, but just to go over kind of some more of the actual, like, step by step, Brittany as Sarah was saying, kind of lied to her mom. She asked her if she could come down here on spring break.
Some every 17-year-old has done.
Yeah, the
Yeah.
mom said no, so she, went anyway. And, had friends that were down here. She had a boyfriend that she was kind of talking to, and somewhere in the night, she wanted to go visit some friends that were in a hotel, like, a mile down the road, a mile and a half down the road on Ocean Boulevard. And so she walked down there, saw the friends, was walking back, texted her boyfriend, said, "Hey, I'm on the way back to the hotel," and then nobody had heard from her from there. So, yeah, it was a big mystery. And when you say Raymond Moody had a motorcycle, do we know how she was transported at that point?
We do not. That has not come out.
Because that's
And it may be in his confession, and we just don't. We don't know what we don't know right now.
yeah.
So we're waiting patiently to hear.
I mean, those are the kind of the details that I'm kind of curious about. Is like, at what point, just out of curiosity, not that it really makes anything better, but at what point was she stopped, and how, did he come from behind, or was he trying to talk to her? Just to kind of, I don't know, get the pieces together. It just doesn't.
It's kind of like
know.
understanding someone who could do something like that.
Right. Yeah.
And how
and then,
can't wrap your head
and
around
then
it,
how
so
did
you're
it
like, what
happen?
happened?
So we can all educate our daughters and our kids
Exactly.
that it never happened that way.
Right.
These are the things to look for, because a lot of times in kidnapping and sexual assault cases, we see women will get in the car.
Mm-hmm.
We see it time and again, and they feel so much shame, right, that they got into the car. Somebody like did a slow roll by them. Come on, girl, get in the car, get in the car, get in the car, get in the car, and the pressure's on, and then they just cave and do it, because as women, we're taught not to buck the system, to be polite, to do whatever, you know what I
Path
mean?
of least resistance.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Is it possible that he offered her a ride on his motorcycle
And
the mile and a half down the road and
Right.
she got on it?
It's
all
possible.
those things are up in
Yeah.
the air. Yeah, so that's what we're looking at.
I'm also thankful they got the confession and he took them to the body. For me, that's like, we got the one.
Yeah.
Who really did it?
He
Yeah,
did
you
it.
really know.
He took her there. That's the closure that, nothing will make Brittany Drexel's family feel better, but that's the closure that's like, we did
For
it.
sure, yeah.
And so
There's no more like
that makes me
hearsay.
confident.
And it's also my hope for the Taylor family that something is done to right what happened to him.
Mm-hmm.
You know what I mean? Because we can all accept that we make mistakes, right? But not taking accountability for them and apologizing and making it right is the part we can't get over.
Right. They have
And that's what they have a duty to make it right, and to help him and his family. And I hope they do that.
Right.
I have a feeling they won't. Out of fear of civil liability or whatever that is. But I tell people all the time, especially like government entities and doctors and whatever, we said this week, is that like, you look them in the eye, but you do what's right. And if you do what's right, the rest will follow. So that's what my hope and prayer is for his family.
He's owed a ginormous apology, and as well as Brittany's family, just for, if they thought they got any closure, and if they wondered if it was him all these years, they owe her family an apology for that as well.
Yeah.
So are they, pressing charges at this point? Are they trying to sue or get anything?
No. So it's my understanding that when he stole the money from McDonald's, the state did not bring any charges. And then when they found this out, they used that leverage, the feds did, to try to get him to confess, and charged him with taking that money from McDonald's and got prison time for it. And it was something that the state didn't even think bared prosecuting.
Right.
It was so, minuscule.
But just another tool, another slippery slope tool that is used
Yeah.
Right.
all the time.
Timothy's not able to file something now.
Yeah, I think he can.
I just feel like, from what I've read and seen, his family hasn't really decided on that right now. They're just sort of speaking out. They had a reverend speak out and say,
and I think they're just trying to digest what has happened.
we're just trying to
It's
process
so new and fresh.
after what we've been through, and we're praying for Brittany's family, and we're glad that they have closure, and we are waiting for our apology. I think that's where they left it.
Yeah.
And, for folks watching, this is very recent. Brittany Drexel's body was identified through her dental records last month in May. So a lot of things are still kind of coming out about this case, and then we'll be waiting for a trial for Raymond Moody, right?
Right, a trial
Right.
or a plea, one or the other.
Okay. So, and then when does that happen? Do we have to wait a while for them to set kind of a trial date, you think, or?
I'm sure he's retained counsel. I think a confession is going to make it really hard to overcome unless there's some kind of like coercion. But
The confession in the body makes it
real hard to
a
overcome.
strong case against Raymond Moody. I did see on the public search that they had done a 365-day track, so I think they're trying to fast track.
I have a feeling we'll have a plea. I don't think it'll be a trial by any sense of the imagination, but I think we'll have a plea relatively in the next 3 to
He's
5 months.
also eligible for the death penalty, which sometimes in these kinds of cases they will let you plead to life in prison and not pursue the death penalty
Right.
against you, and that's probably what I foresee happening here, unless something crazy happens.
Yeah.
You know, even to the people who support the death penalty, it feels like that's what they want, right? But the problem is with the death penalty case is that it never ends. Even if you get the conviction, it never ends. It's going to be on appeal for the next 15 to 20 years.
Yeah.
And so giving that family closure and knowing that he'll never see the light of day, you know, outside of a prison wall, I think that a lot of times that's more beneficial than,
Right.
you know, just...
And to see him take ownership too, instead of putting the family through a trial,
Right.
Yeah.
is hard. So just to see him take ownership quickly would be, I think, that would be what would be best for everyone.
Yeah, including him probably. Yeah.
Do we know, I mean, I'm sure this is kind of probably a silly question, but, you know, as far as Brittany being buried in his yard, do we know if they kind of checked the yard for other
I don't know. I
bodies?
sure as hell hope so.
I hope so.
I would hope so too.
Yeah.
But, you know, that's why I say it seems like a silly question, but
And I think that I would hope and pray that Ori and Georgetown County are combing through every missing person case, specifically ones of women and young women and children, and you know, going back through them and combing back through them and making sure, you know,
He's not
if there's any
responsible.
ties to
Right.
it. Yeah.
right.
Even Heather Elvis, I know we brought her up a lot, but it's not far-fetched to think that maybe he could have had something to do with it too. She kind of fits his profile.
She
You know,
very
wouldn't
much
that
fits
be
his profile.
interesting?
Yeah.
You know, and for those of you, you know, if you're watching and you're not quite sure what we're talking about when we say Heather Elvis, this was another case that really has kind of been brought back to light with Brittany Drexel because of all the similarities. But she went missing back in 2017, and you know, still don't know what happened to her. So,
Yeah, I would love to see the Elvis family get this kind of closure.
Yeah.
I'm not saying that I hope that he did it, but I would love to see them get some answers too,
Yeah.
if it's possible.
You know, I think the problem is with the Moores, which is who were charged and ultimately convicted of something having to do with their case, not necessarily murder, is that like in our gut we feel like they were responsible, but there's no direct evidence that shows that they are.
right.
You know, and I think that's, as a lawyer, it's really hard to stomach. You know, we watched that trial,
And just-
like the background of our workday. You know what I mean? It was listening to it and stuff, and it was just...
And just the fact that the Elvis family can't bury their child, you know,
That's-
they're not getting that concrete answer of this
Yeah.
is what happened. And I just,
And they deserve that.
and for me, I'm like, I'm going to doubt everything, even the Moores, until we find her,
Yeah.
you know, and figure out what happened, because I'm going to leave any possibility open, because I think what we want for them is this.
Really
We want them
hard
to find her and
truth,
figure out what
yeah.
happened.
Well, and this doesn't happen in most cases where they find the body. I mean, I'm just,
13 years later, this
Yeah.
just doesn't happen.
it's just
I
amazing.
mean, there's a reason why we have a show called The First 48 Hours,
Right.
because if you don't find the murderer within for the first 48 hours of finding the body, then the chances of you getting an arrest and a conviction just continues to disintegrate as time goes on. And so
Right.
this is just unheard of.
Yeah, it's sad,
Yeah.
but it's amazing, and we're grateful,
Yeah.
you know, that she was found. Well, folks, as always, we will keep you updated on this. If there's more information that comes out, I'm sure we'll do another Carolina Justice Report, you know, once this trial or whatever comes out with Raymond Moody comes to be. But thank you both for chatting about this today.
Yeah.
Of course, let us know if you've got anything you want us to answer in the future. Thank you so much for watching the Carolina Justice Report today. Please like, follow, subscribe all of our channels. We're on Facebook, YouTube, Instagram. We have our podcast, which is the audio from the Carolina Justice Reports as well. We will see you next Tuesday at 2 p.m.
When life gets ugly